Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is a show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happened. So today we return once again to the campaign of 12 Trees, and we rejoin Brendo the Alchemist, Ludwig the Paladin, Salen the Rogue, and Markle the Ranger, as they have arrived at the supposed location of Stormbringer Tower, the facility that contains the Stormbringer cannon. But they can't see it because it's under some sort of spell, whether it's invisible or it has a spell on it that makes you not notice when you look right at it and then look away. But there is a big, high garden wall maze or complex between them and where the tower is supposed to be, so they must delve into this outdoor dungeon, this dungeon with no roof, to reach their goal. So, Ludwig has already spoken the command words. He's held up his magic ring, for the glory of 12 trees, whose blood is my blood, nature is mine to command, and the big bronze lion slab goes to one side, and they form up, and they figure out their marching order, and they journey inside. Now, as soon as they go in, they find a bust of a woman on a pedestal somewhere, and she's smiling, she's very pretty, she's got long hair, could be an elven woman. And there's a little plaque on it that says, "Swoon with me, sup with me, and leave me starry-eyed." And they examine it, they try to see if it's magical, but there didn't seem to be anything super important about it. But they would later find out that that was actually the crux of the entire garden area. And they journey inside. And of course they see like the tablet that says no trespassing, private property, etc., etc. And they are immediately assailed by assassin vines, which are just what they sound like. They're vines that grab you and try to choke you up, but they are of little consequence to a group of more than, say, 2 people. But again, not every battle in D&D has to be a no-holds-barred, you're gonna die today sort of battle. But they have to slice their way, kind of machete their way through these plants that are trying to grab them up and strangle them, because that's what assassin vines do. And as soon as they get into like the first like hallway area, they are again attacked by earth elementals. Now, if you recall, I think the party fought rock elementals before, like stone golems. Earth elementals are usually more numerous, but easier to kill, because if you have a monster that's made of dirt versus a monster made of stone, you want to fight the one that's made of dirt because it will come apart a much easier. And this was Markle's day to shine. He's been our ranger. He hasn't, he didn't get his own subplot like Salen did. He wasn't the tank or de facto leader like Ludwig, and he wasn't like mixing up all kinds of crazy stuff like Brendo was. Markle was admittedly the most like muted character in this campaign, because for all the beasts and monsters that they slayed, his character was supposed to be writing a monster manual. They didn't take back Redhorn's head to get the big rewards, so I feel like the poor guy really didn't get like his moment in this campaign until right here, when they were fighting 4 earth elementals in this medium-sized hallway. And it's very hard to bottleneck medium and large creatures when your hallway is 15 or 20 feet wide. So Ludwig's up there trying to tank with his sunrod shield, and Brendo's like throwing alchemy bombs, over him, trying to do the splash damage. And then freaking Markle comes up and he's like, "I'm gonna take the shot." And he pulls his bow back, and of course, being 8th level, 9th level range or whatever, he can fire a great many arrows in one turn now. But he started landing criticals like the house was on fire. It's just like, boom, critical, that elemental explodes into pieces. Boom, critical, that elemental falls apart around Ludwig's feet. Boom, critical. It takes 38 piercing damage, even though it's an earth elemental and that's hard to do. He just starts rocking the criticals. Like, you realize you're a mathematical impossibility. But we're using Roll20, you know, you roll the digital D20 so people know you're not cheating. Just 20, 20, 20, one after another, blowing these things up. And it's like, you know, 3 cheers for the Ranger! Huzzah! He rocked these guys while the fight was going on. It was amazing. But, you know, once the dust and earth has cleared, you know, they're 2 rooms in and they've been attacked twice. So they go out into like a big stone courtyard and they find a statue holding like a small, like golf ball sized glass orb. So they take it. It's like, well, it looks like glass. It's not really a crystal. And they look around. You know, there's flower beds, there's vines, you know, there's plants growing up between the cobblestones. You know, it's not a very well cared for place. Now it's turning into kind of a ruin because 12 Trees has not been around to maintain the place. But they take the orb with them. You know, they go into the next room. There's a riddle of the fox, the chicken, and the grain, if you've ever heard that one. There's different variations. But it goes, there's a man with a fox and a chicken and a bag of grain, and he has a boat, and he can only take one thing in his little boat to get across this river. So if you take the grain first, the fox will eat the chicken. If you take the fox first, the chicken will eat the grain. And, you know, if you take the chicken, things are fine, but then you have to take one across, and on back and forth. So there's a couple of answers, but the answers you're supposed to do is like, okay, I'll take the chicken across and then come back, and then I'll take the fox across, take the chicken back, take the grain across, the fox doesn't want the grain, and then I go back with an empty boat and I take the chicken across. So that's the answer to the riddle. And there's a couple of variations as far as what animals or there's actually, I think, 2 answers to the order you can do things in, because you can leave the fox with the grain. Well, no. Now that I think about it, I guess there's only one answer, because there's no other combination. You can't leave the chicken with the grain, and you can't leave the chicken with the fox. So I guess you have to take the chicken first. Anyway, that's a very old riddle. It's a very standard riddle. It was basically on like these sliding stone tablets. You could like move them from left to right like beads on an abacus. You could move them left to right to answer the riddle. And they're messing with it. Like, I can already tell they know this riddle. Ludwig understands what it wants. But for some reason he felt suspicious that was just too easy. So he moves the chicken and the grain and the fox all the way to the right, like one after another, like an incorrect answer, obviously, because one of them has to go back and then across again for the riddle to make sense. And there's 2 doors. And when he does this, the door on the left opens. And he's like, well, gosh, okay. So he wanders down that hallway, and he immediately falls into a waist-deep acid pit. And he's like, ah! And he jumps up and he like props his arms and his legs up, and they're like, Ludwig, are you okay? No, it's acid! Pull me up, pull me up! And they throw the rope down and he attaches it to himself. Because Ludwig's in freaking like chainmail or plate mail. And I'm like, Ludwig, you know, what bonus does your armor give you? And he's like, +8 or +9 or whatever. It was something big, so it was probably plate mail. But I was like, okay, cut that in half. I'm going to say you weren't bodily injured, but like from the waist down, your armor is useless. So if it's a +8, make it into a +4. It kind of sucks to be you. So you incorrectly answered the riddle, so the wrong door opened. So they're like, fuck. And they go back and they reset the tiles. And they do it right. You know, the chicken goes across, and then the grain goes across, then the chicken goes back. Then the fox goes across, you come back with an empty boat, then take the chicken across. So then the door on the right opens, and that's the correct door that is not trapped. So then they move on further, and this is a very short dungeon, so I'm just going to kind of run through it with you guys. They go or a short, garden hall thing. It's only got one path to it, and it's quite short to get to the tower. So they come across a giant sundial that is like the courtyard floor that they go into. It's got numbers 1 through 12. It's got a little like what is it, obelisk, I guess, a very short obelisk in it that's only like 7 or 8 feet tall that tells the time of day by its shadow. You know what a sundial is. And at the very top is another small glass orb, and they take it and they're like, oh, okay, it's just like the other one, yeah. And they push on through some double doors. They pass a set of garden walls that are arranged like a hallway, and at the top of them is a bunch of overgrown topiary animals. There's an elephant and like a bird, a giraffe, all these different exotic animals. It's like they're gonna fucking come to life and try to kill us and eat us or something. And Brendo's like pulling out the Molotov cocktail. He's got like his little lighter thing. He's like, I'm gonna burn them all. And Ludwig's like, no, don't. If you catch one thing on fire, this whole place is plant life. It could all go up in smoke, and that would take us with it. He's like, oh, you're right. Well, if one of them comes to life and eats me, I hope it eats you first. So they go very slowly through this hall of topiary animals. And it's high noon. The sun is high in the sky, so it's not like they're having any kind of problem seeing or getting around. It's outside during the daytime going through this garden wall place. It was a very strange concept as a dungeon. So they push this garden grate open, gate rather. They push this garden gate open, and they emerge out into like a big courtyard that has a decorative pond and some fountains and a mosaic of a beautiful elven woman. And they notice that standing in the middle of the pond, maybe up to its knees, is a horse. And instantly, Salen refers back, I think it was Salen, refers back to the paperwork that they found before. One of the exotic magical animals that they were picking up to measure for magijoules was a kelpie. So a water horse. The only thing is, though, kelpie will pretend to be like beautiful white horses that you want to go up and touch, or you want to go up and pet or ride on, and they will stand innocently there until you get close enough, and then their beauty melts away to look like rotted driftwood, and their manes become seaweed, and their jaws become crisscrossing teeth, and their tails grow into long fishy tails. And their skin is so glue-like and sticky that you stick to them when you touch them, and they drag you down like crocodiles, like in their jaws, and they do the death roll with you to suffocate you and eat you. So there's a kelpie standing in this pond, and just then, when they show like a hesitance, a few more horse heads slowly rise up out of the water like fucking crocodiles. Until there's like 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and they're these nightmarish, like sunken-eyed creatures with the wide horse like goat pupils, and they're just like all watered down and briny and nasty. So they didn't fall for the beautiful horse, so it slowly like sinks into the water and like melts into its real form. So, can kelpie go up on land? They don't know. So, they start skirting the walls because, again, kelpies are... I don't think they're especially powerful, but there are a lot of them in this pond. So, Emily could not keep a kelpie alive at Fort Stormshot, so she sent them to this big decorative pond, and that's where they stay to eat birds and cranes and any other wildlife that comes near. But when 4 dudes come around the corner, they tried the beautiful horse tactic and it didn't quite work, so now they're just kind of waiting and floating slowly through the water, hoping that they'll come near enough to like grab them by the arm and pull them into the water, drown them, and eat them. So across the way, behind another grate that won't move, is a statue of an elven monk. He's kind of sitting there, in the lotus position. He's got like a bowl and a stone spoon in there. Is there anything in the bowl? No. Can I get the spoon? Ludwig is kind of starting to piece together that plaque from the beginning. Swoon with me, sup with me, leave me starry-eyed. And, sup with me, hey, we can get the bowl. Oh, we can't get the bowl. Can we take the spoon? Yeah, you got the stone spoon. Okay. And earlier, I'd forgotten to mention this, earlier, at the very start of the place, amongst a bunch of flowers, Brendo actually found a stone flower. So they have a stone flower and a stone spoon, and they've got these two crystalline orbs that are no doubt eyes. So they work the lock, they try to get the grate open to kind of move on to another area while the Kelpie are waiting for them to come close enough to the water. But there's no lock on this thing that they're trying to get through to like the next area, and they find the buttons to open the thing are on the edge of the pond. And so they kind of draw lots to see who's going to push the buttons. And like Ludwig's like, all right, I'll take one. So he goes up to the corner of the pond that has all the Kelpie in it. And of course they sink immediately to kind of hide and wait and see if they can spring on him. So he's like, okay, I push the button and jump back. I was like, roll reflex. A Kelpie explodes out of the water with its jaws wide and sideways, like you see when a horse tries to eat a freaking fruit from your hand and it tries to rip your arm off. And of course Ludwig jumps back, and the Kelpie splashes back down into the water without him in its jaws. Salen, being our rogue with the highest reflex check, decides he's going to be the one to do the other ones. He's like, okay, I push the button and jump back. Roll reflex. Salen is successful as well, and the Kelpie does not grab him and pull him to a watery grave. And of course, with both buttons pressed, the grate swings open. Now, I can already hear some of you saying, well, gosh, why didn't they just use a grappling hook and walk along the walls and skip the whole thing? Fuck you. The game would have been 10 minutes long. Do you want to play D&D or not? I can't blame people for being clever, but if you're just going to skip a dungeon, don't come to my table. And I made them agree, like, way back in session 1, please don't walk through walls, please don't read minds, please don't fly, please don't skip entire fucking swaths of the game just being clever. Play the game. Come on. I don't know if it's just me. I feel like I run into people all the time that they don't want to actually play, they just want to get to the end. It's like, well, if your journey's that short, the destination's not going to mean anything. So, sorry, that's just a personal pet peeve of mine. Anyway, they wander out into this grand stone courtyard, like the third or the fourth one they've come across so far, because this place is arranged like a garden. And the stones are arranged in a circular pattern all the way to the middle, where they see a statue of a beautiful woman, yet again, sitting across from her husband, her lover, or something like that. They are clearly having like a romantic encounter of some description by the expressions on their faces. And Ludwig's like, all right, I think we've got everything that we need for this. Remember, swoon with me, sup with me, leave me starry-eyed. So they go over to this statue of this woman, and they put the spoon in her hand, and they take the stone flower that Brendo found, and they put it in the man's hand. And of course they notice there are slots where her eyes should be, so they put the two glass orbs up into her eye sockets, and they kind of glitter and light up a little bit. And the next door, the wall slides away to reveal a further passage. Well done, heroes. They found everything without having to go back, so it was really good on them. And they emerge into a chaotic sort of room, rather than all the neat stone and vines and beautiful flower gardens and neat gates for them to walk through and stuff. There's stuff scattered everywhere in this next room. All the tiles of the floor, or the stones of the floor, have been torn up to just lay about in piles every which way. There's a bunch in the corner, there's a bunch laid around. Looks like somebody was like digging a hole or something in this room. But all of the stone bits that are on the floor have big hieroglyphs on them. They find one that's got a sword, this one's got a shield, this one's got a man, a woman, a child, a minotaur, a dragon, a sun disk, tree branches, a church, a castle, a potion bottle, a spear, a tavern, a lightning bolt, all these different just choices and choices and choices and options. And then, of course, this deals up into another puzzle that was like, there were like inclines or alcoves in the wall where they needed to go on, that they needed to place tablets according to a poem that they found, which was, of course, for the glory of 12 trees, whose blood is my blood, nature is mine to command. So out of all these tablets, they had to find the ones, in the name of, so they go looking for a long time until they find they find a tablet that has 12 trees carved into it, and they put that in the alcove. Whose blood is my blood, so they find, the man and the woman tablet, blood is my blood. Nature is mine to command, so they find, the only two nature symbols, the lightning bolt and the tree branches or whatever, and the door comes open. But while they're doing this, they find a hidden door off to one side that led to a completely different area. Like, they knew they were heading towards Stormbringer Tower, but this, they kind of like, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Brendo who felt the air exchange up against the wall in one of the corners. Like, it's a secret door. So they kind of push on it and they pull on it and they manage to like crowbar it open. It was just held shut by its own weight. And they emerge out into like a hidden area. Like, they thought the whole place was surrounded by trees and stuff, but they emerge out into this small like clearing that's surrounded by brambles and vines and, boulders and all that kind of stuff. But they emerge out of the stone area into like a more natural setting, and they find a small building. It almost looks like a mausoleum, but clearly it has stairs that go down. So the path is forking. Do they go for the tower, or do they go to this other area? They chose the other area. And it turned out to be a laboratory. Now, they've already been to Emily's laboratory because, she had that at Fort Stormshot. So surely she didn't have just a second laboratory out in this garden area. No. The laboratory belonged to another one of the 12 Trees cultists. His name was Connor. Now, Connor we've only mentioned before because Bradford encouraged him to go knock up some girls in Dewhurst to spread the bloodline around, because that's what the Flower Festival was for. So we've only mentioned him once. Don't feel bad if you don't remember. Connor, unlike Emily, was not like an inventor or a magic item creator. He wasn't making doomsday devices and forging things onto unicorn horns and things. He was a more conventional scientist who was interested in animal behavior, communities, what happened when you messed with resources, etc., how populations would move around. And it was here that they kind of unearthed the reasoning for one of the reasons that Bradford and 12 Trees were going to wipe High Seat, the capital, off the map. And they actually found some more papers, which I will read to you here. Because again, these characters are not around, only their mail and their diaries and their notes are, because I'm lazy like that. So let me read this to you. This is what they found. Bradford, as promised, here is my final report on the Utopia project. Universe 26 will be my final iteration of the experiment. I don't think I can learn more from this setup. I started with 8 pregnant females and 12 healthy males. The population peaked around 900, stagnated, and then slowly died out. All this over the span of about 1,200 days. Giving rats infinite food, water, nesting material, shelter, and a lack of predators gave me some pretty horrifying results. After the initial 100 days of getting used to their contained world, a hierarchy among the males was established. The dominant males kept harems instead of pairing off, viciously defending their territory day and night until exhaustion and extermination by upcoming males. females of breeding age nested properly at first, but in a contained environment were unable to get away from the advances of any breeding age males of any caste or rank in the colony. This led to less nesting, less maternal care, and a very, very high infant mortality rate. Baby rats were even left behind when the females were moving from one place to another to nest elsewhere. Constant harassment led to similar exhaustion, compounded injuries, and less breeding in general. Older females nested in the different apartment levels of the colony, completely away from the general population. Finally, a generation was born around day 800 that completely lacked any sort of empathy. With infinite resources and no predators, the males did not court, and the females had no desire to breed. When the last male of breeding age died, Universe 26's population nosedived until extinction. You were right about High Seat. So Connor was running, I'm sure some of you have probably heard of it, the Rat Utopia project, where a scientist built like a containment area for rats and then just threw them in to see what would happen if they had infinite food and water. And that's kind of a description of what happened. So Connor is comparing his rat experiments, called Universe 26, to High Seat. If there's infinite food and infinite water, eventually it will collapse into absolute anarchy. That, the balloon can only grow so big before it explodes, and so on and so forth. So if a utopia ever existed, humanity would fall apart. So if they don't introduce a little chaos now and then, things just fucking nosedive. It's a great documentary. I think here on YouTube, Down the Rabbit Hole talked about it. It's a great, if morbid, YouTube channel that goes and talks about different people and different kind of hairy subjects, and the Rat Utopia project was one of them. It's very sad and depressing and graphic, so don't watch it right before bed. But I might put a link in the description below. Down the Rabbit Hole Utopia, or Rat Utopia. Look that up sometime. It's very morbidly interesting. But I put that into this game to give them a reason to destroy High Seat. Like, if a city becomes perfect, then it falls apart, basically. So if High Seat becomes this big shining beacon of perfection where everybody's happy and they want for nothing, eventually society kind of crumbles because they have nothing to build for, nothing to look forward to. They stagnate, and eventually the population just goes out. So they are comparing rats to people, which is not the best analogy because we are far more complex creatures. But Connor thinks that Bradford is right about High Seat, that it needs to be destroyed. What else? Emily, and these are papers that they found throughout the place. Emily, please make sure the Stormbringer cannon needs less than 12 people to operate. The creature, which was the Kirin, was hard enough to contain to power the thing, and I do not plan on asking the North Storms for help in this matter. Our friendship is threadbare as it is, and I will not bring them in on our plans so that we may have one of them breathe a word of it in Dewhurst. If you need better materials, more time, or something else, let me know, and I will make it happen. Our finances are well in hand for anything you might need. To Bradford, one of my subjects escaped. The unicorn blasted its way through the damn wall. More confirmation on Redhorn escaping. Now he is out there in 12 trees doing Bacab knows what. He's already augmented with my armored potion, crystallized on his horn. He is going to be pissed. We either need to hunt it down or at least warn the townsfolk. There is no telling when or where he'll turn up. Give him a scary name or something so people will pay attention. From Emily. So that completes the saga of Redhorn. Bradford was the one to start the rumors about him, and once he started killing people, the rumors became true. So, Oh, speaking of finances, we have this. Bradford, our earnings continue to go up. What did I tell you? Compound interest is the most powerful force in the world. Emily may be a genius, but moving monies around is my domain. Well, yes, it certainly took some doing to get that dragon out. What does it say? It certainly took some doing to get that dragon out, and I didn't like splitting the horde 50-50 with the North Storms, but I've certainly put it to good use. So 25 druids hunted down a dragon and killed it together so that they could be rich. Those city planners and such think it's some kind of 12-person retirement fund for a bunch of nobles in a neighboring country, squirreling their money away to avoid certain taxation laws. But getting an interest rate of almost 1% per month, I'm making an absolute killing. I'm making some false expenditures, keeping the funds in that safe we got, but putting the money right back months later is always fun. Let everyone know that dinner is on me for the next few years. Our balance sits around 200,000 gold pieces, all tied up in stocks and bonds and other things. But if you need any sort of giant purchase to be made, let me know, and I can have it to you in less than a week. I think one of those bank tellers is sweet on me. Perhaps I'll stay in High Seat for a long weekend and see what she's like. My love to you guys in Dewhurst. I'll be home later next week. From Jacob. So they have a finance guy in their cult, because of course they do. What else? To Hasso, who is another cult member. Hasso, make sure the Amazon is thoroughly on ice before you return to town. I never want to see her again, and I never want her to meet her maker. She is ours now, and she will go nowhere. And she will go nowhere. Again, so long... How did I word this? Ever. I put an extra Y in there. And she will go nowhere ever again, so long as you continue to make that cold agent for her prison. Perhaps you can jerry-rig a repeating fireball trap kit to continually supply the room with chemical cold? I'm not an alchemist like you, just do your best. Do not let her die. She took Primus and the other 4 from us. Emily is beside herself with grief and is throwing herself into her work. I can't think of a better punishment than this. Bradford. So Hasso was the one who designed the cold prison that was holding Vara indefinitely in cryostasis. So all these little threads are kind of coming together. Another more interesting one. Bradford, the topiary dragon, is complete and animate. It will attack anyone who tries to force their way into Emily's laboratory entrance. Flame retardancy is an issue, but so is standing in an enclosed space with something that is on fire. I would not worry about intruders any longer. From Regina. So, they find a whole bunch more correspondence. These people were a pretty well-oiled machine. You know, they had a scientist, a guardian, a finance guy, a brilliant alchemist, you know, a very rich leader. You know, they slayed a dragon and took half of its horde and gave the other half to the North Storms. They kind of know what's going on. This is a relatively well-run cult. They don't just hang out in a cave and chant, blah, 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 to summon Cthulhu. No, they're in it for the long game. They've got money. They've got hidden locations. They've got laboratories. They've got neighbors, you know, quote-unquote friends in the other North Storms. So, you know, 12 Trees kind of had it going on back in their day. So, they go through this laboratory, Connor's laboratory, and they find Universe 26. And, of course, it's full of rat skeletons and not much else. So, giving rats infinite resources, eventually they lose all interest in breeding and they just die out. So, Connor compared that to the humans in High Seat, the biggest shining capital in the region, and thought that they should destroy it before it reaches like this perfect state to where the people want for nothing and they won't build anything and they won't do anything other than sit and get fat and not have children. So they introduce a little chaos and the world keeps turning. So nature is mine to command. They built something called the Stormbringer cannon. So perhaps a gigantic storm would blow High Seat off the mountain or something like that, but we're gonna see. So having found out all this information, the party kind of turns back around to get back on track, and they go through the last set of double doors that they had opened with the tablets puzzle, and they get close enough, and they find themselves in a gigantic circular courtyard, and as they get close enough, the invisibility spell sort of evaporates off the tower by proximity. So if you get within 100 feet of the tower, then you can see it. It's kind of like a force field that you can walk through. So it goes up, 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 skyward, who knows how many stories, stretching towards the sky, and it's square-shaped. It's not very big, but it is very, very tall, and the party is sort of reminded of the barrel of a cannon. So they hope the whole thing isn't fucking like a hollow shell that fires god-sized cannonballs over the horizon to crash into the city. That'd be ridiculous, and I should probably write that down because it sounds funny. But they go inside. It's not locked, and why would it be? With all those defenses and the garden complex dungeon behind them, why would you lock the front door? And they step inside, and they find that there are no windows. Now, the room it's small enough that it's sort of lit by leaving the double doors open. And they find that they can go up or they can go down. So there's some burbling fountains, there's plants growing up out of the floor, there's a carpet, and it's relatively fancy. This is feeling kind of final bossy at the moment. And they see ahead of them is another one of those big bronze lion faces. That's kind of become the symbol of, 12 Trees members only. And there are two statues of two lions on either side of it with glowing golden eyes. And they turn towards the stairs that lead downward. They're also covered by another big bronze lion face. And they're like, Ludwig, do your thing. He's like, all right. So he wanders up to the one that leads upstairs. He's like, by the power of 12 trees, whose blood is my blood, nature is mine to command. And the lion is like, incorrect. Wait, what? And then you start hearing this sound. And the glowing golden lion eyes shoot lasers in all directions. Everybody roll reflex. Okay, you take 15 damage. You take 15 damage. Salen tumbled out of it. Andy's a rogue, so he doesn't take any. He's like, what happened? I said the words. You didn't say the right words. You got one password to remember around here. He goes, what? That's the right password. No, it's not. And I can hear, like, Ludwig shuffling his papers over Roll20 or whatever. And he goes, oh, shit. It's for the glory of 12 trees, whose blood is my blood, nature is mine to command. And, of course, the lion faces on both sides kind of slide out from under. It's like, Salen, can you do anything about those laser-shooting lions? And Salen's like, well, yeah, sure, I'll try. He's got, like, his thieves' tools to disable traps and stuff. He goes around behind these lions, and he finds, like, a big panel, and he pulls it open. And it's full of wires and refraction crystals and all these other things. And he's like, oh, what am I looking at? Because, if you miss a disable device check by enough, the device goes off again. So if he fucks it up, laser eyes are going to go everywhere and fuck up his party. But he rolls, and he rolls well. And I was like, Salen, these laser eye lions look like they're primarily powered by sun rods. So it's like a big bunch of AA batteries. You can just like take them out and put them in your bag. So he pulls out 5 or 6 sun rods out of these big lion trap things, and you hear them kind of go because they got nothing to power them anymore. It's like, all right, you've got like 10 or 12 sun rods. Good job. And sun rods, if you don't remember, they're just like torches, but they're basically glow sticks. So you like crack them over your knee, and they glow for a long time, but they don't burn. and they give off the same light as a torch, I think. So he does this to both lions, so there will be no more laser eyes if anybody says something wrong. And eventually they decide, okay, we're going to go down first and then go up. And they go down into the basement where they find some treasure chests. They find a trap or two. It's just one room. The tower is so tall because it's built like a lighthouse. There's only one room on each floor. So they find a little bit of treasure, and they also find a chest that has a golden gun inside. And Salen picks it up. He's like, oh. And he takes his revolver, and then he takes the crystalline bullets out, and he puts those into this new golden gun, and it's got like a ruby sight on the end. And he's like, and I was like, Salem, this gun looks really familiar, because it's the exact same gun that Sheriff Graham wields. He's like, what? Really? And he looks down, and it's the same golden gun. It's the same design. And it's like the reason that they didn't screw around in town is because they knew the sheriff had like this golden gun revolver that had like a ruby sight and like gems encrusted all over it. No doubt a powerful magic item. Well, he found that gun's twin in this chest. And they go, is Sheriff Graham associated with 12 Trees? Because there's like two slots. It's like nice velvet, a velvet chest. And like one of the slots was empty and Salen has the other one. Is Sheriff Graham associated with 12 Trees? Shit, this keeps spiraling out of control. So Salen loads up the crystalline bullets and he spins the chamber and he puts it in the holster. He's like, we'll have to go talk to Sheriff Graham after all this. Fuck. You know, the tendrils of 12 Trees go in all directions, it seems. Then they come across the tower's nerve center. That is the place where Emily routed all the wires and the tubing and like the little sparkly crystal things that keep all the traps moving and keep all the doors magically locked and stuff like that. And they don't want to touch any of that because God knows how many magijoules your body could take before it kills you if you grab the wrong wire. And then you fall over dead. So they didn't mess with it. But they found, like the brain, the nerve center, whatever you want to call it, of the tower down in the basement, along with a few other treasures to augment themselves, one of which was the lion face shield. I don't know if I had mentioned that before. It was like a +1 or a +2 shield with like a lion's face on it, that if somebody comes into melee with you and tries to hit you but fails to do damage, the shield would bite them for like a D6. It was really cool. It wouldn't attack them. It would automatically do 6 damage. So it was very cool. Ludwig picked that up and he really liked it. But they found a whole bunch of money and a couple of magic items and odds and ends and things like that. And they move on upstairs and you know, the ground floor is much the same. There's nothing else interesting there. They move up to the second floor. And I had my notes somewhere. Where'd it go? Yeah, sorry. There's so much going on. I have to keep notes. Yeah. The next room that they wandered into was a trap. And not that there was a trap in it, is that the room itself was a trap. Ludwig was leading the way, you know, brand new golden lion face shield on one arm, and the sword of bladed light, which was basically a lightsaber. It was one of the magic rings, was made for like a lightsaber, basically, from Spaceballs, you know. So he had a lightsaber in one hand and a shield that bites your opponent in the other hand, going up the stairs, feeling pretty badass. Then he steps on a tripwire, and all the doors and everything else slams closed and is held by magic. And Salen, our rogue, is like, what did you step on? And he kind of like reaches down and he follows the tripwire around, up the wall, across the ceiling, to a record player. And this room looks like a dormitory. There's like 4 beds and 2 fireplaces and a kitchen area and a little like bar. And there's seating and stools and you know, there's a poker table in the corner. There's jewelry box sitting in one place. And the room is just filled with stuff. much like the house, I sat on D20, on roll 20 for hours and hours, making this complicated room for them to wander around in. So there was food on the tables and steins on the bar, and it looked like people had just left, basically. There was just stuff strewn everywhere, but it looked like a living space, like a dormitory. But this tripwire trips a record player to start playing as our heroes wander forward, and it's a dwarven woman's voice, and it's probably Emily, and she says, if you're hearing this, you probably shouldn't be here, so I'm gonna have to kill you. But I'm not gonna try the accent. But I am a woman who enjoys fairness, so I'll give you a fair chance to escape. There's a keypad or a number pad up on the door ahead of you. It won't open otherwise, and you need to punch in the proper sequence of numbers to make it open. And I know that's anachronistic and this is a fantasy setting, but Emily was a genius, so I'm going to give her number pads. So she basically explains to them that they have 1 hour to escape the room, or the room will kill them somehow. Probably with gas, or like teleport them outside and let them drop 10 floors or whatever like that. And I've got this little timer on the desk in front of me, and I click the button and it beeps. And all of my players instantly panic and they go, Tony, did you just start a timer? And they look around and they look at each other and they go, is this an escape room that you've made in this dungeon? And I go, yeah, you've got 1 hour to get out or I'd kill you all. And they're like, fuck! So they start running around looking for clues. And I don't know if you've ever been to an escape room before, but I'll describe them briefly. Basically, it's like an amusement park kind of thing, or if you've ever been to like a LARP or anything like that, where the room is the LARP instead of you. So it might be dressed up to look like a Victorian library, or a mad scientist's lab, or a serial killer's basement, or your grandfather's mansion, but it all takes place in one room. And you have to find all the keys and codes and solve puzzles and little things like that in real life to unlock the door and leave the room before the timer hits 0. And most of them are traditionally 1 hour. So, and there are some really fancy ones out there too. So, I think one of the companies is called Escapology. If you Google Escapology, you can see stuff like futuristic virus code. You gotta find it, or it'll within the hour, or it'll delete the internet. Or your uncle died and you're stuck in this room in his mansion, and the real killer is trying to frame you, and the police are gonna be here in an hour, so you have to find evidence that proves you didn't do it and leave the room in an hour. Stuff like that. And they're very fun. They're a little expensive, so they're not an everyday thing, but they're really fun. But I'd never seen that like in D&D before, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make an escape room in D&D and then time them for real. So they start running and they find all these clues, and I can't really describe them all because I would just be running through a gambit of riddles, and that's not a whole ton of fun. But they're tossing stuff on the poker table, they're turning over mugs, they're running through all the food. The food is fake, the food is plastic. Shit. We start looking for secret messages, and there's a deer with six-pointed antlers on the wall, and they look in its mouth and they find a clue there. And all these different things, and they were rushing around like their hair's on fire, because yeah, I would have killed them, because if you can't lose, there's no point in playing. I was like, you have until this timer hits 0, and then I kill you, so good luck. They managed to escape the escape room in 30 minutes and 40 seconds, so they did a very good job. They even flipped the record on the record player. They flipped it over, and the dwarven woman's voice comes back on. I was like, oh, aren't you a clever dandy? Well, here's a hint for you. You need 13 digits to get the door open. Good luck. And they found all 13 digits, And who should string them correctly together? Salen, our riddle solver, who is never fucking wrong, because that's how smart he is. I wish I had like 6 guys like Salen, because he's so freaking smart, and he's very good at dungeon crawling, now that he's kind of got his confidence. But, Salen strings all the numbers together, and he gets it in like the first shot. And I was like, you get 3 chances to get this right, so be very careful. Otherwise, the timer or the lock like times out, and you can't put any more in. So he gets 13 digits out of all the clues and crap that they found, and he lays them all out in order. And he's like, okay, it's 133117 blah 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 blah, and he gets it right in the first try. I was like, Jesus, Salen, how smart are you? Stop it. All the drama goes away. You get it right every single time. It's fine. It's fine. He's an amazing player. But they journey upward out of the escape room. It deactivates itself, because in order to activate it again, you have to step on the tripwire again. So the only reason that room even turned on was because Ludwig was leading their marching order, and Salen was not looking for traps when they came up the stairs. So they could have avoided that altogether, but thankfully they did not, because as you might imagine, that room took forever to design correctly. Anyway, they head up to the next room, and they run straight into the topiary dragon. There's like a fountain and a well and several flower beds. There's no windows. There's no telling how this place grows or changes or maintains itself. But they run into a topiary dragon. So it's like a big earthen creature with bushes all up and down its head and its tail. It's got branches for horns and big gnarled vines and branches for wings, and it menaces them as soon as they come into the room. Joining it are a pair of earth elementals. And what does every dragon do as soon as they open a fight? They use their breath weapon. So the topiary dragon's breath weapon is like shards of rock and earth. It just like sprays part of its body at them, and it covers the ground and the stairs with soil and rocks and bits and bobs like that. And that rock, all that earth and stuff, coalesces into another earth elemental. So every time it uses its breath weapon, it creates another earth elemental. They're like, shit. So they've got to go fight this thing. And Salen's there with his big golden gun with his magic crystal bullets. Boom! Boom! You know, Markle's firing arrows as fast as he can. Remember, he's the mid-level ranger now. He can throw like 6 or 8 arrows now in quick succession. You know, Ludwig is doing his very best with like his fucking lightsaber and his shield that bites people. And they back off for a second so Brendo can throw the Molotov cocktail, because it has plant life on its back. And he throws it, splash damage of fire, and it catches fire. Now, again, there are no windows, so they have to back off because of the smoke. And of course, it follows them down the stairs. It's not stupid. But they fight this topiary dragon on stairs, and eventually they manage to bring it down just by sheer force of fucking will. Because, you know, the breath weapon is every 4 turns, and every 4 turns it creates another earth elemental. And then it shatters into a million pieces of just like plants and loam and earth and rocks and geodes, and it just kind of falls apart. And then after like 20 seconds or so, while they're fighting the earth elementals, it coalesces back together into 2 more earth elementals. So they've got to fight more of them. There's like 5 or 6 of these fucking earth elementals, and these weren't the little ones. These were like the greater earth elementals, the level 9 motherfuckers that'll like put their fists together and like double axe handle your face, and you take like 35 damage. These are mean elementals they were fighting. But in all eventuality, with many wounds upon them, they finally manage to take down the last one and like smear the magic circle that's on the ground in this room that keeps them coming back. Like there was a fountain surrounded by a magic circle, and I think it was Markle who ran by and like smeared the circle, and now they don't like recoalesce anymore. So Markle ended the fight, thankfully, because if they kept coming back, eventually our heroes would have worn down and been slain. So good on him. And the place kind of goes silent, so they pass out the healing spells. They marvel at their own power as they have felled a dragon. You know, whether it was like an earth dragon or a topiary dragon or whatever the letter from Regina said, but it was the primary guardian of Emily's laboratory. So they knew that the next floor was going to be Emily's laboratory. So they go up and up and up, spiraling through this place, again like a lighthouse. There's one room on every floor, till they finally reach the very top, and it is glass like a greenhouse. And they find the Stormbringer cannon. And if you guys have seen like the Alien series, you know, like the space jockey who's sitting up in the big chair with the big like cannon-shaped thing out in front of him, it's kind of like that. It's a great big thing that's sitting open, much like a bolt-action rifle, and they see inside is a giant pink canister, big enough to hold a horse, and they can see a shadow curled up inside with a great horn or set of horns like tree branches sticking out of it. They have found their Kieran, and there's tables and junk all around them that have notes and scrolls and scientific calculations and all things around them. They have found the Kieran. They have found the Stormbringer cannon. This is kind of it. And that is where I will stop for today. There's a little bit more to tell, but it looks like my camera's batteries are about to go, so I'm not going to cut this short. I really want to revel in how the end goes. So we will make yet another episode of this campaign, but our heroes have reached the Stormbringer cannon. They have found the Kieran, and they have reached kind of the last breadcrumb of their journey. So what will happen now? Well, you'll have to find out next time on D&D Stories. Keep gaming.
Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!